Hugh, we got minicamp today. The Eagles have a mandatory minicamp, as a lot of teams around the NFL do. A lot of stories going on, including some high-profile players, defensive players in the NFL are holding out, including Trey Hendrickson. And speaking of Trey Hendrickson, Hugh, there was an article last week, NFL.com, and some analysts were asked, which trade do you want to see before the 2025 NFL season begins? And our next guest, Marc Ross, an NFL.com analyst, his take was Trey Hendrickson to the Philadelphia Eagles. Well, that got my antenna up. Let's talk to Marc Ross right now. Used to be with the Eagles, now NFL.com. He joins us on the Midday Show. Marc, how you doing, man?
Marc.
Excellent. What's up, fellas? What's up?
What's going on? So, Marc, I'm kind of curious because my biggest hang-up when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, and I think he can play, but when you look at what the Eagles did in this offseason financially, they tried to cut a little bit of money from the defensive side of the ball. So I'm more hung up on the money. So do you think, with that being said, that the Eagles would trade for Trey and pay him?
Well, Hugh, why are you worried about money, man? It's how he always makes things happen with the money. So that's how he came into the business. That's still his sweet spot. And as we've seen in years past, when they want to make something happen, they make it happen. They move the money around. He creates certain things. And, that's part of the reason why clearing that money, maybe to make another move, not just to say we're trying to save it on the defensive side, but maybe we have something else in store that we're going to use this money for. So it's always is that puzzle of piecing it together. And at this point, you shouldn't doubt Howie with how he's building the team.
Marc, let's talk about Hendrickson as a player, because it's kind of amazing what happened. 2 years in a row, 17.5 sacks. He led the league last year. And the Bengals, who can't stop anyone on defense, they decided, you know what? Let's just pay all the offensive guys and say, sorry, Trey. How good of a player do you still think he is as he goes into his 30s now? And how much longer do you think he has at this level?
Yeah, I think, with the way he plays the game, it never was about I'm the biggest, fastest, most explosive player. And when those are the guys that kind of run into problems later on when they play, because when you lose that step or you lose that explosiveness, that's when you decline in the production. But guys like him who just are excellent technicians and savvy and quick and have that guile, similar to how Hugh was. I mean, Hugh had some explosiveness a little bit there, but, relied on a lot of other factors there to get it done. And when you see him play, I think he can continue that style of play for a couple more years where he's just not flat out running by people. He's getting it done with all those other intricate moves that a defensive end needs, a pass rusher needs. So I think he's got at least a couple more good years left in him. And, yeah, that Bengals defense couldn't stop anybody. I mean, they couldn't stop a high school team last year. So, their building philosophy is different. But just as a player himself, I think he's got a lot left.
You know what? I'm kind of curious because you talk about him being a technician and all this other stuff. I think about him, Trey, and I think about T.J. Watt, and he's a similar player when you talk about stuff like that, Marc. But my question to you is this. Why is it that when you said that they still have some football left in them? So why is it that the Pittsburgh Steelers are willing to play this game with T.J. Watt and the Cincinnati Bengals doing it with Trey Hendrickson? Why is it so easy for them to basically look like they're going to move off from those guys?
Yeah, each situation is different. Cincinnati, as you just said, they're prioritizing the offense and everything that's going on with the offense. And then with Pittsburgh, that's the bizarre one to me because when T.J. Watt plays, Pittsburgh wins. I mean, they don't win at the level they should win in Super Bowls and all that, but they just lose when he doesn't play. And if you can look at their one-loss record when he's not in games, he has the importance of a franchise quarterback to the Steelers. Now, they still need a quarterback, but just the impact that he has when he plays versus when he's injured and doesn't play is you just check the stats. It's amazing. So I have no idea what they're doing. Pittsburgh generally is not really big spenders in free agency, and they do things a little bit more deliberately and take some time. So I think that will get done for sure with Watt, but they just aren't really the most proactive with the way they do things in Pittsburgh.
Marc, the Eagles have 13 draft picks in the 2026 draft, and they had a lot this past year. And look, it looks great, and cheap talent is what teams need, especially when they have a lot of highly priced players like the Eagles. But I wonder if they almost have too many picks. Like, could they really incorporate 23 rookies in here in 2 years while still trying to win Super Bowls? So I'm on the side of, let's consolidate. Let's trade a few of these for a guy like Trey Hendrickson. Marc, what do you think the cost would be if the Bengals did get to a point where like, hey, this guy's not showing up, we got to get something back. But he only has 1 year left on his deal right now, so it's kind of a complicated trade for two teams to come to agreement on. What do you think a reasonable cost would be, considering how good he is, but the contract situation as it is?
Yeah, I think that, as you mentioned, it's better to have all those picks than to not have them. So you've got all these assets that, okay, now moving forward, what do we do with all these assets? And we're in a position to make the best decisions with all these assets, whether it be, let's say, trading a second-round pick for Trey or packaging something else later on. So they've got all of the assets to make good moves and smart decisions, which they will do, and they're not desperate. It seems as if they're pretty happy with their young guys they have here, and eye on the future of doing something else as well. But I think a 2 would get it done for him. The money is really the big hang-up with the Bengals trying to get that off of the books there, and whatever price they can get for him. The longer it goes on, I think the more desperate they will get for him.
Mark, the idea of his contract is obviously the biggest hiccup, right? And you said how he'll figure it out. I'm curious if you think there could be a middle ground if he gets moved. Obviously, he wants a long-term deal from the Cincinnati Bengals. They don't want to give it to him. But let's say it happened here. Let's say, August 10th rolls around and the Eagles trade a second-round pick to the Bengals and they get back Trey Hendrickson. Do you think there could be a middle ground for the Eagles and the player because he just arrived here? And I'm thinking something like, hey, he makes $20 million this year. Hey, we boost you up to $32 million, so you're more in the neighborhood of the great pass rushers, but we don't give you a long-term deal. Do you think the Eagles could pull this off without a long-term deal attached, or is that going to have to be part of this if they get this player?
Yeah, I think they could do it. I talked about the team aspect of getting desperate, but the player as well. Trey Hendrickson doesn't want to be sitting around not playing football, and the age is a huge factor there with him. And like, okay, I have a chance to leave the worst defense in the league in Cincinnati or go to the defending Super Bowl champs, and let me work something out with them. That makes it a little bit more enticing. When you win, when you have a great organization, when you got other great players around, when your situations and circumstances are so much better from where you're leaving to where you're going, that's when you find players a little bit more willing. And their agent now, Howard, I'm sure he's on the phone with his agent just saying, hey, look, this is the situation you're stepping into. Everything that you're going from to is so much better. You're going to win here. You have a chance to make so much more money by playoff bonuses and winning the Super Bowl here, winning championships. You kind of entice the player and hope that they give a little bit because of all those ideal circumstances.
Mark, I'm kind of curious about the way you see the NFC East shaking out this year. The Dallas Cowboys are going to be healthy. We talk about the New York Giants and what they've done. Do you see this as a two-team race, or do you see the Cowboys potentially being a problem this year, and the Giants for that matter?
The Giants, first of all, they may not win 3 games again. I mean, if you look at their schedule, and it is absolutely brutal, and especially with that quarterback room. Dallas, I have no faith in Dallas whatsoever. Even if Dak comes back, I think they're a flawed team at a lot of different positions. And then it's really the Eagles are the team to beat in the East for me, and even in the whole NFC. And I think the Commanders will be better with the signing of trades for Tunsil and Debo, and I think he's still got something left. So I think the Commanders will be in the mix to challenge the Eagles. But I'm picking the Eagles for the East. I'm picking the Eagles in the NFC right now.
Oh, that means we're going back-to-back. At least getting back to the Super Bowl here.
Are we going back-to-back?
We're going back-to-back.
How hard it is to go back-to-back,
It's not easy. Mark, all right, let's end with this. So you mentioned the Commanders as the biggest Eagles challenge. I think most of us agree with that on the division. Mark, when you look across the NFC, who's the biggest challenge for you looking out to the Eagles? Is it Detroit again? We never saw that matchup last year, but they were the 1 and 2 seed. The Rams gave them their most difficult game in the postseason. Landscape of the NFC, who's the biggest challenge for the Eagles to get back to the Super Bowl?
I think it is Detroit. Then that health factor that was talked about a lot, but that was real. I mean, certain teams get hurt, but I mean, Detroit, if anybody watched their games, it was every week that they had somebody going down, particularly on defense, and they just couldn't sustain that. Now, I do not think Detroit will go 15-2 again. I mean, I think that their schedule is a lot harder, and there's a lot more outdoor games that they have to play. So I don't think they'll be 15-2. I think they'll be good, but just the way they're built with that offense and a healthy defense, they could challenge Philly. Tampa will score points. You know what they can do. And then the Rams, as you said, they gave the Eagles the best game, the most competitive game there in the snow in the playoffs. They'll be in the mix. Commanders, as I mentioned, I think the Packers will be a lot better. but just looking at it as a big picture right now, it's hard to go back to back. It's hard to repeat, but just everything.
We talk about that every day, dog. Hard to go back to back.
For Philly to do it. And it's, if they don't, they'll be in the mix. I can't say they'll repeat, but they will be in the mix 100%.
Great stuff. Mark, we always appreciate you joining us on the show. Have a great one, and I'm sure we'll catch up soon. Thank you, Mark.
Sure thing. My pleasure.
Have a good one, brother.
Marc
Thanks a lot.
Ross.